What is going on? Welcome to the MMA podcast, June 28th, 2018. Joined here by a very familiar voice if you listen to the show on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. It's P Money. What's going on, fam?
Oh, Jake, we are posted. It's a thankful Thursday here on the MMA podcast. Thankful for everything we got. Thankful for having a fantastic host such as yourself, Jake. Looking forward to breaking down some great action as always. And man, it's a beautiful day. Glad to be with you.
We posted like Malone. The feeling is mutual as far as thankfulness for a good co-host. And this is actually going to be the first show with a new format we're going to try out. If it doesn't work, we might go back to the old one. If it does, we might stick with this. But, you've been familiar with the show being weekly, or, we'll miss a week here and there. But for the most part, a weekly podcast or every couple weeks. In our shows, anywhere from 45 minutes, an hour to up to a couple hours. Back in the day, we do 3-hour shows. But, recently it's been about an hour per show. We're going to change that up. We're going to make the podcasts more frequent and shorter. Honestly, just kind of, thinking about it as a consumer, what am I more likely to listen to? A 90-minute show where they talk about a whole bunch of stuff, or just, a 10-minute segment where they might break down a certain topic or two. I feel like that would make things easier for the listeners, kind of makes things easier for us. It allows us to talk about things that are a little bit more time sensitive. MMA, especially recently, kind of has felt like a 24-hour news cycle. There have been times, just thinking back as recently to UFC 223, where it seemed like there was a new bit of news going down every few hours. So we're going to be trying this out, going to be releasing multiple shows a week, aiming for that maybe 10 to 20 minute time frame. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. And this will be the first one of those, Thursday, June 28th, 2018, start of a new chapter for the MMA podcast. And I guess we'll get straight to it. I do want to talk about some fighters retiring. Johnny Hendricks, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida's move to Bellator, Vitor posting Instagram pictures of him back on the juice. But first, I want to start with James Vick filling in for Iaquinta, who is out of the Justin Gaethje fight. This all coming down in the last day, I believe, and it's leaving Paul Felder as the odd man out, the company man, getting screwed for the second time in a year. He even tweeted, I hate, prepping, training, cutting weight for a fight, and then you're gonna pull out the rug from under me. Before we talk about this new matchup between Gaethje and James Vick, what do you think about the whole Paul Felder? Does he have a right to gripe about being left without a dance partner again, or should he just keep his mouth closed? And he has been a great company man up to this point, and not saying he's being a bad company man by speaking out, but the guy has been on broadcast. He's definitely kind of ingrained himself with the UFC. What do you make of all of this and them kind of screwing Felder for the second time in the last year?
Yeah, definitely unfortunate for Paul. He's definitely great in every aspect, really, in his commentary work, his work in the cage. He's got 3 super brutal finishes he's got in his past 3 fights, so he's got a nice little winning streak going there. And gosh, it's super hard, especially these fighters, they have that goal, they have that contract. You're going to be fighting this opponent on this date, and that's what you're working towards, that's what you're training towards, that is your motivation through your camp and your weight cuts and all this stuff. And it is increasing, and it has been over the past few years, fighter pullouts, fights falling apart as of late. But just because it's increasing in frequency doesn't make it any less frustrating for the fighters that have to experience it. Of course, even if you expect the unexpected, it doesn't mean it doesn't suck when shit happens. And even if he is getting some show money, that's great. But hey, there's no possibility of a fight night bonus if you're not fighting. And there's no possibility of your win bonus either. I mean, unless the UFC's just been feeling super generous, which is a little outside of what we know from them, and has decided to pay Paul both his show and win money in both of these circumstances. If so, you'd say, hey, well, maybe you don't have a whole ton of room to gripe there, but still a frustrating situation no matter what. When you have your agenda, things are penciled in, so it's unfortunate. Definitely. And Paul being a guy that definitely seems to really be the ultimate company man. He's great in the media, great in the cage. You really can't ask for much more from a fighter. Hasn't had any bad news stories coming out about him. And some would say maybe even why hasn't he been the one getting bumped up into these slots? He very well. I mean, I don't know if anyone would have bitched about him being in there against Khabib Nurmagomedov as opposed to Al Iaquinta. Perhaps Iaquinta maybe having a perceived better wrestling skill set than Felder could have allowed him to get that fight versus Nurmagomedov. But, same thing what we have here with Vick and Gaethje. Paul Felder versus Gaethje, how could they not make that fight? That would just be fireworks. Both have a very striking-oriented style. Again, could it be because of Gaethje's D1 wrestling background? Who knows? He certainly doesn't fight with that background, but very tough goings for Paul Felder. I feel for the guy, but certainly he's an entertaining guy. Everybody wants to see him again. Hopefully, they get him a nice replacement fight for the same card.
And that brings up this new matchup now that Al Iaquinta is out. We have Justin Gaethje fighting James Vick. This is an interesting one. Vick 13-1. His only loss coming to Beneil Dariush back in 2016. He's a very, very large lightweight. He's 6'3", compared to Justin's 5'11", has a 6-inch reach advantage. Actually is 2 years older than Gaethje, even though Gaethje has a lot more fights on his record. Speaking of Gaethje, started his career 18-0, but has dropped his last two. Both, I mean, his all three of his fights in the UFC have been highlight reel wars. The win against Michael Johnson could have gone either way. Both guys rocked multiple times. And you can say the same exact thing about his fights versus Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. And I think that's why, even though my brain at first kind of wanted me to take James Vick, noting the size advantage, noting the fact that he has fought a lot of hitters. And yes, he did get knocked out by Dariush, but has been able to withstand that onslaught against a lot of guys. The reason I'm going Gaethje, all these hitters that James Vick has been able to survive the onslaught with, he's been able to use his length to neutralize them. Not saying he won't be able to do that against Gaethje, but it's going to be a lot harder for him to do so than against somebody like an Abel Trujillo or a Francisco Trinaldo or someone along those lines. On the other side, Justin Gaethje, like I said, even both of his losses have been wars that could have gone either way. Justin lands any punch at a different angle, and who knows if it turns off the lights of Justin or Eddie. Yes, he did lose those fights, but I think James Vick is gonna need to be ready to go into a war here. He's going to get popped very hard, rocked multiple times. I don't know if I can remember a fight where James Vick really went out there and was getting hit and looking uncomfortable. Most of his wins have really come by wrapping a guy up, taking him down, getting I think he finished Abel Trujillo via Darce choke, Jake Matthews via guillotine. I think because of Justin's wrestling credentials, he'll be able to keep the fight where he wants it, keep it a striking match. And if it is a striking match, I don't know if James Vick has what it takes to get into a war with a Justin Gaethje. I mean, the two guys he lost to, Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, they're not just top lightweights right now. They're legends of the chin. They are both guys who have chins that will go down in the all-time pantheon of greatest chins of all time. So I think you really need a absolutely steel iron chin to make it past Justin Gaethje. Not sure if Vick has got it. Still think he has a chance just because of that massive size advantage. But if I'm making the pick right now, I am going with the highlight from Safford, Arizona, Justin Gaethje. What about you, P Money?
Man, it's a real tough call for me on this one. James Vick, been a big fan of his since the the Tough Live? I want to say Tough 15 he was on, and been riding with my dude ever since. And man, I think he's definitely got the skills to pull it off. It's definitely going to be one of the toughest fights he's had in the UFC. And he's been calling for it for a long time now. He's 9-1 in the promotion. His only loss being that knockout to Benny El Dariush. Admittedly, not a great look, but he's certainly got the momentum well in hand at this point. He's got a 4-fight winning streak right now, finishing everybody except for Francisco Trinaldo. And I want to say Trinaldo himself was on a pretty good roll there before he got in there with James Vick. And that combined with Gaethje being in some wars in his first 3 fights, I mean, even he could have easily won all of these fights and he could have easily lost all of them. I mean, he almost did get knocked out by Michael Johnson too, but he came back to survive that one and ultimately knocked Michael Johnson out. And he did suffer some heavy TKOs though in his fights with Poirier and Alvarez. And it's going to be very interesting to see if he adjusts his fighting style. Some would say he's seemingly going to have to. Man, I don't know though. I think Vick has that length. He's got some good ground skills as well. He's got some submissions on his record. I think he can get it done. And I think I'm riding with the Texecutioner for right now in this one.
P Money going with James Vick for right now. I'm going with Justin Gaethje. That fight will be August 25th, 2018 at UFC Fight Night 135 in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our next podcast will be found tomorrow, June 29th, Friday. We'll put it up on Twitter. We'll put it up on the YouTubes, the iTunes, the SoundClouds, all the good stuff. Thank you for listening, and we will see you tomorrow. Until then, we gone.